Hi, I'm Nikki.
And I'm Steph.
Welcome to the Unstoppable podcast.
This is the podcast where we sit down, have coffee, and chat about all things health, wellness, mental health, and what it means to be an unstoppable woman.
Hello, Steph.
Hi. Look at us. Back for episode 3.
Have you got your coffee? I have in my Clover cup.
I have. I love these cups. They're so bright and colourful. And how could we not? Couches, coffee, that's the theme, right?
100%. It is. Episode 3. It's come around so quick. Can't believe we're here already.
It's very cool. Very cool. And I think today's topic is so prevalent to the fact that we have launched this podcast and, getting it out there into the universe, because the whole point of having these sort of chats was to be able to support other people from the lessons, we've learned ourselves, as well as, teaching our clients over the years too. So I'm really excited for today's topic. I think it's a big one.
Would you like to introduce the topics for today?
Absolutely. So today's topic, we're going to talk about non-negotiables that changed my life. That's a pretty big statement. And what I love with that statement is because it couldn't be more truer. I had no idea what the hell a non-negotiable was. I remember the first time it was mentioned to me and I was like, I don't really understand what this thing is, but I understood what it was made out of, and the things that I do on the day-to-day that just help me feel more like me, help me feel more centered and present, and especially when things can get a little bit heavy, crazy. And as busy women, I don't feel like there's ever really a period of life that things aren't hectic and crazy.
And I think the non-negotiables go really well into what we spoke about in our first episode. So if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to it. But we briefly speak about the small things that we can do to start our journey and start your health and fitness journey. I think non-negotiables are one of those things that sometimes seem a little small, but they make the world of difference.
Absolutely. And I feel as we spoke about, the wins are in the small things. But the small things also add up. Those little bits each day, that 1% each moment that you choose a different choice to be able to be that next version of yourself, they truly, truly add up. And before we know it, sometimes, we've climbed that mountain. We're at the top of the mountaintop. But what I love about non-negotiables is that they form the foundation of the things that we can lead into when, motivation can be a bit fleeting. Motivation's not always there. We don't always feel like we are the most powerful, unstoppable people in the whole wide world. But I feel like non-negotiables really bring us back to that center point, that foundational point, so that when we are feeling a little bit overwhelmed or lost, or that maybe the journey isn't going the way we thought it would, we have something to be able to lean back on and really hold as an anchor.
100%. And I think non-negotiables are one of those, we talk about it in our coaching a lot, but keeping the promises that we say, when we say something, we're going to keep that promise to ourselves. And I think non-negotiable, even no matter how shit your day is, if you're achieving those non-negotiables, that's a win. And we always talk about celebrating our wins. So I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Doing the things you said you were going to do. Those small things that we can bring it back to that gives that win. And, I love the fact that we're both emphasizing small. We so often think that we have to make massive changes, or these big things have to happen in our lives to become this whole brand new version of ourselves. But really it's identifying what serves us, what makes us feel centered, what helps us bring back to that level of, middle point, feeling like we're kind of in balance when everything is a little out of balance. And especially when things are challenging, or we're trying something new, we're trying to push the boundaries of something that maybe we haven't achieved before, that's where motivation can really not show up sometimes. I wish I felt motivated all the time.
I think everybody gets to a point in their journey where motivation just isn't there anymore. Maybe the excitement of this big new goal has died down, and then you've really got to channel into those non-negotiables, I'm doing this for the bigger goal, but these are the small things that I need to achieve in order to get there.
Absolutely. That lowest hanging fruit. I really love that thought pattern of we can't give 110% of our best effort every day, because sometimes life requires different things. And although we are trying our best to be able to show up as the best versions of ourselves, it may mean another area of your life is asking for a little bit more than what you possibly feel like you could give yourself at the moment, or you're spread a little bit thin. So being able to have those things that you come back to that help you feel like you are progressing and that are essentially achievable. So what about you, Nikki? What would be some of your own non-negotiables?
My non-negotiables are always something that, like you mentioned before, that something that makes me feel good is 100% my walk in the morning with the doggos. I love it because it sets me up for success to get my 10K steps throughout the day. I find if I sometimes push my morning walk later in the day, then it's almost like the oh shit, I've got so much further to go now. And I think non negotiables are a really good thing to correlate to that as well as like, well, maybe we didn't do our 10,000 steps today, but what did we learn from that? I learned that I need to do my morning walk in order to get my steps in the morning. And then it's a flow on effect. So I really love that for my first non negotiable. That it probably also goes into the getting sunshine in the morning, especially now I'm down here in Vic. These winter mornings are cold. So going for a walk and walking around MacArthur in the sun or as the sun comes up is really good and it fills my cup too. One of my other non-negotiables is having my big ass water bottle and drinking at least one or two of those per day, but I try to have at least a half of that when I wake up because we're dehydrated and it makes me feel good. And then fueling myself for breakfast, usually I try to aim as a non-negotiable even when I'm sick, I'm unwell, I don't really feel like food. I always try to have 3 meals in my day, no matter what that looks like, because food is fuel and I know I feel better mentally and physically on it as well, or having enough of it, I suppose.
That's so powerful. Thank you for sharing. It's what I really loved with all the non-negotiables that you named is they set you up for success at the start of the day and then have a flow-on effect into the other things. Like I feel like they really sit in all of the categories of mind, body, and soul. Like you're not just moving your body because you know you need to move your body, but because it feels good for your soul, for your heart, to spend time with your fur babies. You know, be able to just do that thing, I guess, for you, but also it would make you so happy to make sure that their little cups are filled in the start of the day, getting out there as well.
What are your non-negotiables? Now, you've had a bit of a change up recently in your world. Do you have any different non-negotiables to maybe what you have done previously for the past 8, 9 years?
I think it's actually been really something that I've been reflecting on recently is there has been so many periods in my world, in the growth and the beautiful transformation that has been the last 9 years of JugFit, that I've had to grow and change too. But the things I always come back to have really solidified in those non-negotiables as a point that I want to continue to work on. For me, my number one is always sleep. If I don't get enough sleep, I will chat to anyone who wants to talk about sleep, because the day that I decided sleep was the biggest priority in my world went into Technicolor. And I never realized how much of an impact it had on my emotional regulation, on being able to just think straight, my full immune system. I used to get sick so often, and I can truly tell now when I haven't had enough sleep from both a quality and a duration standpoint as well. At JugFit, we love data. I love data. And so investing in my Aura Ring and actually learning more about my own particular sleep data gave me this whole new superpower. So stepping into a new chapter of life where my schedule looks a little bit different, it doesn't mean that I'm, throwing all of those things out the window. I'm still trying to stick to my same bedtimes that I know have served me in the past. I know that my best quality of sleep happens in certain hours of the morning, so I'm ensuring that I'm able to get a really beautiful wind down at the end of the night and coming into that same sort of time of waking up in the morning, regardless of whether I have an alarm or somewhere to be or otherwise, whether it's Saturday or Monday, to be able to keep the same routines, because I know that they truly, truly make a difference as to the quality of human being I can be. We go to bed at this time and we get up for school at that time, and then as adults, it feels like, for many of us, we step into a similar routine because our work and jobs and family mean for it. But when you get given an open-ended period of time, like the weekend, or not having to actually be somewhere on a particular schedule, this is where things can kind of come off course a little bit. And like you named about getting sunlight in your eyes, first thing in the morning, resetting that circadian rhythm, that natural body clock. As we know, our sleep has such a power point over whichever goal you would like to step into, regardless of what that looks like, whether that is fat loss, recomposition, body mass, whether you're wanting to run a marathon or climb a mountain. If your body is not recovering as well as it possibly can, sleep is always that foundation point, and it's free. It's one of those things that we get to have in this world that is absolutely free and makes such a big world of difference. So coming from a former night owl who would stay up till all the crazy o'clocks to now someone who has a pretty set schedule of just how my body wants to wake up and go to bed, it definitely can be one of those superpowers to harness and to give a little bit more, love and respect to. I don't think we give sleep enough credit.
100%. And we know, just on that sleep, not to dive into the depths of education.
We could do a whole topic on sleep.
But it is your number one recovery
Absolutely.
tool. And I actually had a prime example of that this morning. A little bit of personal aspect. My period was a bit delayed this cycle, but it finally come yesterday, and I had a really good sleep last night. My sleep score was like 90. I was feeling good this morning, and I went and did like 22.5 kilos on my RDLs. And even though my readiness on my data of my Oura ring was still around 60, so it's still saying there's minor signs, I felt good, so I did it. And I think that's a prime example of why sleep can make the biggest difference in how you feel.
I also love the fact that you saw it in the data. There's something metric and there's something measurable, but you also reflected on how you actually felt. I feel like there's so much education out there around so many different topics that sometimes that can skew how we actually have a conversation about with ourselves of how do I actually feel today? Like you named, the start of a cycle generally comes with this misconception that you should be weaker, that you shouldn't be able to lift as much or have as much energy, but that's not the case, not for everyone, and definitely not for each cycle, because every cycle can be completely different. And sleep, oh my goodness, the quality of what our bodies can determine our sleep quality becomes increased in body temperature, the start of a cycle, late meals as well, like having dinner too late or training super duper late at night. Yeah, increase in that body temperature, and it all become a massive personal curiosity point. What are you doing in your daily habits that actually help you wind down at the end of the night? And starting at the start of the day as well. How would you like to feel? How does your energy feel? Because I know I personally got over waking up feeling tired every single day.
Yeah. That is a beautiful first non-negotiable, Steph. What are your other non-negotiables throughout your day or your week?
Movement. It's definitely movement. And that's dialing it up or dialing it down. So I love a good step target. You named that your step target sitting around that 10,000 steps. I always really giggle around 10,000 steps because of where that goal, kind of came from. And for anyone listening that doesn't really know what the 10,000 step rule or where it came from, was a gentleman who created the pedometer, basically had a really good marketing technique, and that's where 10,000 steps come from. But if you step into it with data and you know what you usually would do within the day, a pedometer, an Oura ring, an Apple Watch, if you're the type of person to keep your phone on you 24/7, just to have that point of seeing what you naturally do, and then being able to keep that consistent across the board. So steps are a non-negotiable for me too, especially being a little bit more off the gym floor and a little bit more sedentary workflow at the moment, as we're sitting on the couch. I've made it a non-negotiable as well to be walking at least 1 point in the day. For Darwin, in the complete opposite end of the spectrum to Victoria, it is gorgeous up here at the moment, and the dry season comes and goes so quickly. So making the most of these 25 to 27 degree mornings, being out there in the early morning sunshine and being able to get a little bit of a dint into that step target definitely helps me feel better throughout the day. But I find that also mentally, moving my body first before jumping into a solid workflow or something where I really need to concentrate for a prolonged period of time just helps to create a bit more of that clarity too.
Could you give us an example of a situation that you've had, whether it be recently or in the past, where you have chosen to dial up your training and chosen to dial down your training? Because you mentioned
Oh,
that when you were talking about your movement. So, like, I would love to give an example to everyone as like, what does that mean?
so for like I've shared, on our previous episodes, and for anyone that has followed my journey on social media, I have a bit of a background of doing big crazy things like competitive bodybuilding. So when I'm in an element of peak, I guess, or really asking so much from my body, my step target can look like 15 to 20,000 steps a day. It can be resistance training, 5 to 6 sessions in the week, plus cardio on top of that. But for life at the moment, I'm sitting in a really beautiful maintenance period where I'm focusing on giving some love and respect back to my body and really thanking it for everything that my nervous system has been through, particularly in the last month. So training and movement for me at the moment looks like breath work and meditation and connecting in with my body. My step target is between 10 and 12,000 steps a day because that's just kind of where my body sits naturally, and it did when I was moving around on the gym floor a little bit more, so being able to keep that consistent. And then I have 3 heavy, challenging resistance training sessions at the moment, but we're putting a bit more focus on unilateral movements, so rebuilding some of those solid foundations. I also, in between, are stepping into some slightly different movements and different types of body connection at the moment, which obviously through JugFit we step into a lot of mobility and stability, but I've gotten super curious around that sort of space. So the breath work and meditation also comes with gentle movement flows like stepping through Pilates, and I've actually been doing quite a few of our pre-recorded Pilates sessions, quite a few of your pre-recorded Pilates sessions, Nikki, from our
Any
library.
feedback?
Oh, I love them. I love them because they're so different. I think we think of movement and we think heavy and hard. We don't think small parts, or if you've been seated at a computer working away for hours, what the benefit can actually be to take 10 minutes to jump up, to give a bit of that flow. I know that my headspace definitely feels so much clearer afterwards. But I use different movement for different reasons. And I definitely feel the output or the impact of different types of output on my mind, my body, my soul. Some days it feels incredible to put those headphones on and that like loud beating dance music and be lifting freaking heavy things. And that's always a happy place. But if I've learned anything from the impact of stress on my nervous system for, in particular, the last 6 months, we can't keep pushing forward all the time. And sharing a bit of information around that space is also, I hope to highlight the fact that, we have seasons. I have a season where I will dial things all the way up and give absolutely everything, but you also need to respect the things that are happening in your world at that period of time and the other stresses, not just emotionally, but impactfully from your environment as to what you step into at which particular time in your life, because we can't do everything at 110% all the time, like we were chatting about. So that movement is definitely a non-negotiable. She just looks a little different at the moment.
I love that. And do you have a third non-negotiable?
Oh, I feel like I've been talking for the majority of this podcast about my non-negotiables. I feel like you
Well,
were like,
that's two.
yes, here we go. I've got this happening. Whereas mine are different elements. So sleep is definitely one of them. Movement is like my biggest piece. And I guess the last one, well, last but not least, I lean into, I feel like you and I are always very much aligned. It is that fueling piece, the quality of food that's coming into my world. I love tracking my food. Only because, well, there's many reasons, not even only because, there are many reasons why tracking your food is massively beneficial. But I look at it from a perspective of tracking came into my life when I knew I wasn't eating enough. And so therefore I use it as a tool to ensure that I'm actually hitting adequate food levels or adequate energy levels, in particular around my major macronutrients and micronutrients to help to support a healthy immune system. Because I know that when I don't. So when I'm not tracking, I definitely don't hit those parameters. And as long as I've been doing this and as much education as I have, we're human. at the end of the day. Some days you're just like, nah, I don't want to. And I'm the first to admit that I will lean into eating fruit or reaching for that apple all day, every day over focusing on my protein.
Beautiful. I love that. And yes, we are very aligned with, I think, most things in life. So, next question for you is, and I'll answer this too, don't worry. Common mistakes you see people make when they go to set non-negotiables.
I think one of the biggest ones is non-negotiables have to come with an element of understanding and fluidity. It doesn't matter how it happens as long as it happens. And I think one of the biggest mistakes I see people set is that they set their non-negotiables and they become absolutely rigid in them. If I don't go for my morning walk, then I don't get the win. Whereas if you went for a walk in the afternoon because you had to be out of the house in the morning, like, so be it, it's still a win. And I feel like we put so much pressure on ourselves, whereas non-negotiables, like we were chatting about, should be those foundational points. They're not a pressure point. They're not something that we should feel particularly challenged by. They're the lowest hanging fruit, the thing that we can lean back on when our nervous system is feeling a little overwhelmed by the things that are happening in our worlds, or that we can lean back on knowing that we're going to feel good when we do.
I love that. And I would have to definitely agree with that. I think one of the other common things I see when people set non-negotiables is set them too big. And even though I love when ladies set amazing, incredible, big, huge goals, your non-negotiables, if you set them too big, will set you up for failure, because as women especially, we love to criticize ourselves and say, I could have done that better. Or if I didn't do it, like you just said, if I didn't do it, then I didn't get the win. So I think even though it sounds so simple, setting the bar lower is I want to say most of the time more beneficial than setting the bar higher. So think about basics, like small things, I would say.
Absolutely, and we see it in neuroscience. It's the way that humans are wired. We're wired for positive reinforcement. So if you're setting yourself up for failure, you're not going to achieve that positive reinforcement. And with non-negotiables, they're on you. It's your choice. It's your world. It's your energy. These are the things that you set to help you feel better of the things that are going on when things could feel a little bit out of your control, or you're trying to find that center point. So therefore, beating yourself up about it is going to be so counterproductive towards what you set out to achieve in the first place.
100%.
Yeah, I think as well with common mistakes around non-negotiables is that not only do people feel like they have to be really, really big, they have to feel like they're different. Like it's something I'm not already doing. I feel like the best place to look for your non-negotiables is the things that you're already doing. I know I love the feeling of getting up in the morning and moving my body, but I know that it looks different on different days. Movement is the goal. The way that it is actually applied could look completely different. And like you were saying, if we don't do it, then okay, then what? If I choose not to do this, then what is the thing that I'm going to step into instead? Like making a promise to yourself, but just being a bit fluid within that promise too.
I think a really good thing that I always encourage with my ladies and them setting their non-negotiables, a really easy non-negotiable is like your step target. If we're aiming for 10,000 steps per day, if you're doing 8,000 steps on one day, you just add the extra 2,000 on another day.
Great.
Especially like if it's, for example, Victoria, if it's raining and bucketing outside and you don't have a small walking pad, you could do laps around the house, but you're probably not going to get there. So just work out your non-negotiables as a weekly view. Sometimes helps the nervous system, I would say, feel a bit more safe with it and be like, okay, if I'm aiming for 7,000 steps per day, that's maths, aiming for 10,000 steps per day, it's 70,000 steps over the week. So as long as you're hitting that, amazing.
Absolutely. And that also accounts for life, right? In terms of like some weekends, cold mornings down in Victoria, wet season up here, like what does the substitution look like? Understanding all the tools you have in your toolbox. So if hitting that step target is not achievable for you, what can we substitute instead? I found such power in learning to be able to relate. So I have a stationary bike at home. So in the middle of like wet season, when I couldn't be hitting my particular step target, it would really actually frustrate me. But learning the relationship and being able to use basically calculation to know how many minutes I need to do on the bike for the same level of movement expenditure needed for my body gave me a whole different tool for my toolbox, which meant my non-negotiable becomes the movement, it becomes my step target. But when things are all thrown at me, okay, I could do this instead.
I love that. So having a alternative to your ideal non-negotiable, and like it goes into that fluidity that you were saying at the start.
Absolutely. I think that is also really important around like going to the gym. So when we start our fitness journey, like we talked about motivation is so high. And that's fantastic. I think motivation gets a bad rap, but we should really commend motivation. Like it feels freaking amazing to feel like you are ready to take on whatever the world is going to throw at you, whatever you want to achieve in this life. And that is an amazing feeling. Our non-negotiables come in the form of our dedication and devotion. So the non-negotiable becomes moving your body. I'm still going to go to the gym even though today isn't, my most strong and powerful day. I know how to use my volume calculation, or I'm just going to go and move my body, or pick the 5 favorite exercises that feel good for me to do today, because that will still give you that win as well that comes from it. And I feel like one of the common mistakes we see a lot is that if we can't do everything to that highest caliber, and the standard we set for ourselves tends to be that thing that we can use as self-bullying sometimes as well, especially to step into those days where emotions may not be as central as what they possibly could be. Those voices in the head become a little bit harder to be able to work with. But when we have those different tools in the toolbox, the conversation becomes, what can I do today? What can I achieve? How do I look at my major pillars, my major things of non-negotiable, and being able to be a little bit flexy with them, waver the colors, but still end up achieving overall.
I think non-negotiables are really good because they become almost like a systems and processes, and eventually it will become a habit. And habits are something that we have to, if they're a new habit, we have to learn to be able to implement. But I think once you start to do those habits consistently, they become a system, and then it's automatically. So even if everything goes out the window, you've still got this system that's like, okay, as long as I'm achieving these with fluidity if needed, I'm going to have success. I'm going to have my wins for the week. And I think, like you said, motivation is a good thing to be able to use when you first start your journey. But there's going to be a point where it's not always going to be high. Shit's going to happen. Life's going to take over. There's going to be stresses. So leaning back on that system of non-negotiables can be really handy to be able to have in your toolbox.
I actually had a beautiful conversation about this with everything changing and transitioning, like I shared over the last month. I had one of our beautiful ladies turn around to me and go, how do you keep showing up when everything is going on in the world, when everything is crazy? Like, you're still training and you're still eating. Like, how do you keep showing up? And my answer to her was exactly this conversation. It's because they're my non-negotiables. It's because I know that I feel better when I do, even though at the moment it feels a bit like pulling teeth to be able to get started, or the last thing I want to do when my world feels heavy is lift some heavy things. But I know that I will always feel better when I do, and stepping into that space and being able to hold on to those anchor points become, like you named, habits, but they also become innately a part of who you are. And we get to learn a little bit more about ourselves. The longest relationship we'll ever have in our lives is with ourselves, and understanding those things that help you tick, that help you feel centered, that help you bring back to feeling of self, means that we can also help to be able to educate those around us. Like, this is really important to me. I need to be moving today. I need to be training today. No, your comments on my food are not welcomed in this space, because you know innately what this does for your body and your soul. And I think that really leans into our last point that we wanted to delve into, was how to create 3 non-negotiables that actually stick. And I think you named it beautifully as well. Like, they become habits, and beautiful habits, because you choose to have them in your life.
100%. And to be able to create a non-negotiable, I think it needs to be small and simple. Maybe something that you're, well, most likely something that you are already doing in your world. You may not have just recognized it yet. And it needs to have that fluidity. So maybe giving yourself, writing it in two columns. This is what I'm aiming for, my 10,000 steps per day. But over the week, if I get my 70,000 steps per day, tick.
Yeah, I see that as those columns as well of like standard levels. Like this is my gold standard. This is my optimal level. This is what I want to achieve. And this is my good enough. And some days good enough is good enough. And you still did the thing you said you were going to do. But we get that element of being able to turn the dial up or turn it down. The other thing I wanted to name as well is the fact that, we're talking about how to create 3 non-negotiables that really stick within your world. And naturally, you and I both lent into 3 being our, non-negotiables that we shared. I think 3 is a really good number to be able to sit in terms of achievable. And they generally will sit into different categories. I have a big belief that our whole journeys and our overall beings sit into those categories of mind, body, and soul, and that your non-negotiables should do the same. So what do we do for our mind, our energy, our emotions? What do we step into to be able to support this body, this vessel that, we have the privilege of living in this planet? And then what are the things I do for my soul? The things that just help you feel like you.
I think that's really a good point to finish on, especially with a world where lots of our ladies and women in this world are always high achievers. We don't want to add any extra stress onto your plate or any extra negative stress onto your plate. So I think 3 is a really easy number to be able to work with, because sometimes if you give yourself more than 3 non-negotiables, you are going to go straight into, holy shit, this is a lot, overwhelm, not going to do any of it. So 3, I think, is great to start with. If you want to add on, you definitely can. But I think in a world full of everyone's busy, everyone's doing stuff, whether you're a mum, whether you're a student, whether you got study, whether you're like pushing so much into your business and trying to build that and make that grow, 3 is definitely a beautiful sweet spot.
I feel like the last thing I wanted to add to that as well is they should be for you. Your non-negotiables are not what you feel like is expected of you by other people. It's what you lean and anchor yourself to. They're not about anybody else. It's how do you show up as the best version of yourself for yourself first, so that we can support and be able to help, support, navigate, encourage others around us and give the love we know they deserve.
So that wraps up today's episode on our non-negotiables. If you need any help, or you're finding you're overcomplicating picking your non-negotiables and you need any help, you can find us on jug.fitness on Instagram, jug.fitness on Facebook. Send us a DM. We'd be more than happy to help. And we hope you have an unstoppable day.
So guys.